everybody. I am joined by Coach Danny Martoe, and I have to tell you, this year has been a transformative year for me, and I talk about it all the time, where I decided that I was going to stop ignoring myself and working only on my businesses, and figured that the best way to work on my businesses was to and my life, my marriage, and everything was to work on myself. So I started studying philosophy, I started dieting, I started exercising, and funny enough, I was visiting a my skin doctor. I had an issue I wanted to get checked out, and the skin doctor says, "You know what? In the nicest way possible," he said, "I have a friend who does life coaching and can help you, kind of help you lose some weight." I think it was the nicest way that. And this is a doctor that you have to respect, right? Like, so it's a doctor, and he said, basically, you're fat, and you shouldn't be, and you're a little out of shape, and I know a guy that can help you. And I was like, hey, I'm humble enough to admit I'm not in the best of shape. I'm getting a little out of control here. And I wasn't happy with where I was at. And he gave me Danny's number. So what I wanted, and I gave him a call. I got connected, and he told me about a program he's got, a coaching program he's got. And I jumped in. And here I am, maybe five months later, and I'm down 40 pounds. It's the way you ran the program, the what you did, and the psychology behind it. It's not just a weight loss program. It's not just an exercise program. There's accountability. There's other guys involved. There's gamification. We're going to get into all that, but I want to talk to you about your story, because when I got to know you, I was like, people need to know who you are and your background and why you got started. So thanks for coming on and agreeing to chat with me today.
Well, Brandon, thank you very much for having me. And yes, Dr. Larry has a very subtle way of telling you you need to do something. So I'm glad he did bring us together. And congratulations to you on doing a really good job.
I got 40 more to go, man. I got 40 more to go. I'm
Hey,
jumping back in.
it's a journey. It's a journey that never ends. And you mentioned something in your introduction that I'd like to kick off with, because it really resonates with my own story. And that is, if you don't come first, then everyone and everything in your life comes last. And I deal with a lot of busy professionals, a lot of busy fathers, people that are on the road a lot. And that was me, right? I was a high flying sports agent working with the cream of the crop when it comes to professional athletes, traveling probably 300 days a year, spending nights away from home. And, my excuse was, well, I don't have time. I have these clients. I have this business. I have my children. I have my partner. And it wasn't until I woke up one day and I looked in the mirror and I said, wow, who's this guy? And that's when it really started to dawn on me, along with a couple of trips to the doctors where I didn't get the good news that I was so used to always getting. And it was a wake up call. And what I realized, and when I thought through that perspective of, if you don't come first and everyone and everything comes last, then it made sense. At first, it sounded selfish. As a parent, I always say, hey, I put the kids first. But when I realized that I was not showing up as my best, when I was showing up half of what I was capable of, well, then guess what? Everyone in my life, my children, my wife, my clients, my business, they were all getting that same version of me. And that wasn't fair. And once that hit, the switch went on, and that's when I got on the path to become the best version of me.
I tell you, it's definitely led to some breakthroughs in our marriage with Jennifer and I as well, because I think every marriage is very difficult, and I highly recommend everyone listening to this get some form of therapy. So having someone to speak to help you, whether it's a personal coach, whether you want to call it a life coach, whether you call it a therapist, helping you to sort out your thoughts, to get organized, to set some goals, to have some accountability. But in the marriage side, it really helps to help learn how to communicate, learn how to understand each other's feelings. And the biggest problem that I always had is that I always felt like I was doing for the other person. And I like to me, what I learned is that that's not the right way to do things. That's not the way to have a healthy marriage. The way to have a healthy marriage is to improve yourself, to work on yourself, and by results, you are doing for the other person a great service. You are going to be there more for them. You're going to be healthier. You're going to be able to deliver at a higher level. You're going to have results in the marriage and in life that are going to help the marriage. And you're going to be able to be a better person for that partner by working on yourself first. And that comes from professional training, from the professional and executive coaching that I pay a lot of money for, the life coaching and the working on myself for fitness, and the psychology and the therapy and the things that I do for myself, the philosophy that I study. That makes me a better husband. That makes me a better father. That makes me a better executive and a better mentor and a better person overall. And so I love that we're aligned there, and that's what really got me on board 100% with you. So I want to dig more into your story there because it's fascinating. That's the glamorous life people see when you were a sports agent working with one of the most famous. Your partner was the most famous in all of football sport. I think football mostly, as far as agencies. And you were at parties. You were wining and dining and hanging out with some of the coolest people in the world, and that was such a great life. But at the end of the day, you saw a decline in your health. You saw a decline in your lifestyle, and your life longevity was getting worse. You were hurting yourself, even though you were having a great time doing it and living the dream, right?
Yes, no, and you're absolutely right. And what I call it is the drift. It's something that just doesn't happen overnight. It happens over time, and it's it takes something to really wake you up. And one thing you touched on that I'd like to just to also touch on myself is, you talked about your relationship. You talked about realizing certain things. That's really that awareness. And establishing self-awareness is key whenever it comes to making change and optimizing performance. And for me, as that high flying, cocky sports agent, living what I thought was my dream, I lacked that awareness. And it took me some time, I'd say about a decade, before I really woke up and I realized that this wasn't the dream I had always dreamed of, and that I need to really get on the path now if I want to live the dream, that the one that I've always had in mind, which really had to do with a great family, living a long health span, being around and doing the things that I really enjoy. But it really is about performance. And in order to optimize performance, you need that self-awareness. And the best way to establish self-awareness, believe it or not, is through your own health and wellness. And the skills that we work on, then it carries over into all domains. So you become more self-aware of yourself and what you're doing. Then you start becoming aware of everything around you, how you interact in relationships, how others interact with you, how you are as a parent, how you are with friends, colleagues, competitors, alcohol, substances. All of this becomes elevated and allows you to, really see things for really what they are.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Awareness. It's a growing up, it's a maturity, it's a reflection, it's understanding who you are, and then it's also identifying what you really want out of life. It's goal setting. I find that a lot of depression comes from not having goals, and not having goals, and not being aware of who you are is a terrible path to be on, right? You might think you're living a good life. You might think that you're achieving some things, but if you don't truly have some very specific and measurable goals, and you aren't fully aware as to what's happening in your body and what's happening in your feelings and emotions, how you should handle certain situations, you are in a reckless, dangerous spot. And I felt like I was kind of flying by the seat of my pants for a long time. And it took me more than a decade as well, I think, to really figure it out. So I really appreciate that. Now, there's a lot on the tactical side on getting healthy. There's there there's different things to measure. There's a lot about longevity. And you're a big fan of is it Dr. Attia?
Yes, Peter Attia. Love Peter
Attia,
Attia.
yeah.
Yes,
Peter Attia teaches a lot around that last decade and having a very high quality last decade, whatever that decade is. And then you teach a lot of strategies around making sure that your conditioning is for longevity and for health span, not for lifespan, right?
correct.
And
Yes,
I'd
and
love to dig into that more.
yeah. So Peter Attia talks about backcasting, and a lot of us just normal. We typically forecast in business. We forecast. We look out 3 to 5 years. But if you want to live that long health span, right? So let me tell you, lifespan is the chronological years of our life. Health span are the years that we get to really enjoy our life. And most Americans save half of the quality of their life for that last decade, and unfortunately aren't ever in that condition to really enjoy it. So, and those are our golden years. So that's not really fair when you
Yeah.
think about it. So Atia talks about really thinking about that last decade, that last marginal decade, and really, how do you want to live that? Well, I want to be able to take care of myself. I want to get on the floor with my grandkids. I want to be able to put a stowaway and travel. I want to carry my groceries. I want to get out of a pool, right? These are all the things he talks about. And if that's the case, well, then you have to look back from there and you have to reverse engineer your approach and how to get there. And the longer that you wait to get on that path in terms of your age, the harder that it actually becomes. So it's best to, and what you talked about drifting for a decade, in my experiences in dealing with men, men tend to start to wake up in their late 30s or early 40s, that time frame. And that's when they say, well, shit, I have to
Oh, you
get
wake
out.
up and you're like, shit, I'm fat and out of shape and stuff's starting to hurt.
Yes.
And you know, but the forecasting thing is brilliant to me. And when I heard his strategies, because once you recommended him, I went and listened and I just binged a bunch of his shit. And what was brilliant about it is like we know that there's just a decline, right? So for me with business, like you said, with forecasting, and then for business, you have glide paths, and then but in life, you have declines. You have declines in strength, in mobility, in cognitive, hopefully not, but in cognitive as well. And for what he's trying to tell you is that, look, if in your last decade you want to be able to pick up your grandkid and save him, God forbid something happens, you're walking with your grandkid, he falls in traffic, and you got to snatch him out of the way of traffic. You need to be able to lift 40 pounds and move it, right?
Yeah.
And he gives you these scenarios that are like, if you're 75 years old in your last decade, or 77 or 80 years old, and you can't do that, and then your grandkid, God forbid something happens, if you work backwards and you know that, look, if you want to be able to do that at 80, at 670, you need to be able to snatch 65 pounds. And at 60, you need to be able to snatch 80, right? Because you're going to have a decline in strength. And so all of these different measures and tests that he put into place are brilliant in my mind, because it says these are the things you want to be able to do. This would represent a good last decade. I
Yes.
love that. I love that it's measurable and specific.
Yes. And again, what gets measured gets better. There's a lot of data that I use in my program because I believe in being intentional about what you do, right? Think about your business. You would never go through a quarter without seeing if how you're marketing or what's the ROI on certain advertising campaigns. But when it comes to us, we don't show up for ourselves like we show up for business. So if we start, and when it comes to dealing with executives and entrepreneurs, it's very important that I make that correlation, because if I don't, then they don't really buy in. But once they see that, well, I treat myself better, then business is going to get better, then that's really when that switch goes off, and then it all kind of unfolds, and it's magic.
It
Uh,
works, man. I can tell you, I'm proof of it, but not just me. I want you to tell some stories about some of the guys. I mean, there's a guy in the group that is an inspiration to me. He just got married. He's been with you how long? You want to tell his story?
yeah, so got a couple of these. Well, first of all, my own, I
Oh yeah,
lost,
yeah. Start with
I think
yourself.
I think I lost approximately 75 pounds in 10 months, and 55 of that came off in 8 weeks. Um, my brother has worked with me, and he's lost about 145 pounds in 7 months. The gentleman that you are talking about, he is down almost close to 200. He started with me at 535. He's lost 200 pounds. He got married, and now he's on his way for the remaining, say, he's got about another 150 to go. He wants to get to 225. I'm not doing the math exactly right now, but so he's just about halfway there. And these are just some of the stories. And a lot of people, when they hear about these results, they think they're not believable, right? You see before and after pictures on social media, and you're like, that can't, you must be taking something, or something's going on. And really it's not. And if I were to pinpoint one specific thing that makes this happen, it's not nutrition, it's not activity, it's not workouts, it's mindset, and it's the switch. We all know when we're not behaving properly. We all know when we should or shouldn't be doing something. So it's not a matter of that. You can Google the best diet, you can Google how to work out. It really comes down to
Right.
change and behavior change, and having a clear-cut strategy and understanding the techniques in order to start to incorporate these things that you want to accomplish in your life.
Yeah, and I saw him showing up every day. So part of your group is the fact that there is accountability, because the way you run it is not, I'm just going to jump on and check in with you every week. That hardly works, right? You figured out a way to get the guys into a group and make sure they're sharing, and reward them for sharing their workouts, their meals, making sure it's compliant, getting feedback from other people, the others holding each other accountable. And he contributed more to that group than anyone else in the group. And seeing him work out and seeing him push himself, every day, man, I if I didn't do it at that point, I felt like a bum. So it made me say, well, shit, now I got to do it.
Yeah. And that's that. It's I call it a perfect storm of accountability. When you are on your own, it's just you, right? I mean, your partner, your family, it's not their job to hold you accountable, right? It's their job to love you. So they're gonna let you off the hook. And when you keep your plans to yourself, then you may let yourself off the hook as well. And if you have a bad day, if you have a rough day in the office, and your only layer of accountability is you, and if that peels away, then you're out of the game. I've designed a program that is ever evolving, and there are so many different layers and data points that I use. I can really tell if someone is drifting or getting off course, and
Yeah.
it allows them to
And you
keep that
check them.
awareness. Yeah, keep them in check.
Yeah, you give a check and you'll call in and be like, "Hey, what's going on?
Yes.
I haven't seen your posts." Like, definitely I got a couple of those texts and calls and say, what's going on with you, man?" And
Yeah.
I get caught up in business, and I'm up late and I'm not sticking to certain things because of it. So it was good to get a check. What I want to know is why people fall off, because you've had a lot of guys come in, you've had a lot of guys succeed. I've seen the before and afters. I've seen the guys with great success stories. And this is the time of year now where everyone's doing their New Year's resolutions. And I did a call on this recently around New Year's resolutions, changing your environment being a big part of being able to change who you are. Because to me, most people fail because they don't change who's around them. Not just what's in your house as far as snacks, because You make us go through the fridge and the closet and throw all the shit out. And I think that that's really powerful because you got to change your environment. Um, and that's a big atomic habits thing. But who's around you as well, to me, is a big deal. If you want to become an entrepreneur, you want to become successful, and you're hanging out with a bunch of losers, it's never going to happen. So why do people fall off in your mind from the program, from what you've seen? What are the reasons that they fail?
So there's a couple things. One, some people will come in with a specific outcome they want to achieve by a certain date, right? So it's, hey, my 50th birthday's coming up. I want to be this by then. And that always troubles me to hear, because when you have an end in sight, well, then you have an end in sight. And when it comes to change, there's homeostasis and allostasis, right? So homeostasis is being one version, going through disruption, and then going back to that version again. Now, there's not a lot of growth that takes place there. And that's what that's what a lot of humans do, right? It's, hey, when do I get to go back to normal, right? Well, what is normal?
Normal for you is what got you to become a fat slob and to not
Exactly.
and to neglect yourself.
Yes. And a lot,
That's not normal. That's not good.
no, and a lot of us were brought up with that triangle food matrix. Parents telling us to stay at the table and eat every bite of food on our plate, right? And a lot of this advice has not really served us well.
They
And
were
then
starving kids in
there,
Africa, man, and if I didn't take the last two bites, it would impact them somehow.
yes, exactly. And then there's allostasis, right? Where you're in one form, you go through disruption, and then you become something new. And people fail because, one, they think they're going through this and they don't fall in love with the process, as cliche as it sounds. And then they're like, hey, I'm doing this thing, and then I'm going to go back to what I was. And that this is a lifestyle. This is a living breathe. This is an owner's, you're creating a new owner's manual. And that owner's manual is a living, breathing document that needs constant updating. And similarly to what you said about environment, environment, you always have to keep it in check, right? If you go through a kitchen makeover one week and then you don't do it again for 3 or 4 months, well, there are a lot of things that I'm sure will slip by security and get back into your area, right? So it's a constant update, it's a constant look, it's constant reflection, analysis, keeping that awareness in tune and understanding what is going on around you. And
Yeah.
people will talk about, you see David Goggins out there, right? You see all these superhuman folks, right? And they're like, well, he's just super disciplined. And that's not the case, right? Disciplined people are smart about the situations that they put themselves in. So it really comes down to strategy and what you talked about before, having multiple goals. Tyson Fury, the heavyweight boxing champion, he talked about being raised to be the heavyweight champ. I mean, he was named after Mike Tyson. And then the day came, he won the heavyweight title. He did not have any kind of a goal or plan beyond that. He fell into a deep depression the next day, ended up losing his titles for non-compliance, and ballooned up to almost 500 pounds and almost took his life. And then he said what brought him back was having multiple small goals and challenges throughout the year. And that's something that you just mentioned that you need to do, because it keeps you engaged, it keeps you in tune, keeps you aware, and keeps you on the path.
Right. So it needs to be a regular check-in where you're setting those regular goals. So like when in business, we do quarterly planning sessions.
Yes.
It's not just we set a goal for our business for 3 years later and we're going to get there.
And
It's
just wonder if you're on pace, right?
yeah, yeah. You got to have regular, you have to have that scorecard on the way up. And what you're saying around making the change as to who you are is more important than anything, because you've got to flip a switch in your mind and you say, this is who I am now. I am the person that exercises regularly, that watches what I eat, that this is my new diet. I am now the person that this is the way I behave. And these are my habits now. And it isn't just, I'm that other person that's doing this for a little bit.
Correct. And we have to be careful about our comfort zones. again, awareness. A lot of people are just walking through life unaware of what they're doing, their behaviors, and the effect and impact it has on their health and those that are around them. Also, being honest with yourself, whether you are ready to go back into your life without the assistance of maybe a coach or a program. A lot of people that I coach, I see them and I tell them at the end and beg them, hey, you're not ready yet. And then what happens is they go off, they're like, hey, I just want to figure this out on my own. And then I'll get a call a couple months down the road. So it's really important. You don't have to be perfect. It's not about never having pizza or ice cream or having a drink or indulging. It's about having a good system and really being strategic about what you do. And there's always things we can do. There's always boxes we could check. And I think that's the most important thing. So you asked, why do people fall off? I think there are a host of different reasons, whether it's not having enough goals, not understanding that this is a lifestyle more than just a 10-week program, and then not having clear-cut rules and then holding yourself accountable to them, right? If alcohol is a problem for you, it's probably not best for you to be in a bar for a while. And if you can't have a proper relationship with alcohol, then maybe it's not the best fit for you. And the same goes with foods and other substances and things out there as well.
Yeah, I like the fact that you do give flexibility too, because you can have a cheat meal, right? So you call it a cheat meal, not a cheat day. You got to be reasonable with it. And then if you fall off, you visit the cleaners. And I love the cleaners. So explain what the cleaners is.
So it's important that while you are in the program, that you have a way to create that system of accountability, because you're not always going to be under the supervision of a coach. So it's important that we practice this while you have a group and a coach. It's also important to be transparent, right? It's ethical. And for a long time, a lot of us, we weren't being honest with ourselves and those around us. So it's important that we practice that. And the cleaner is just a way. I don't know if it's me growing up as a Catholic boy, right? Going to confession, which I wasn't very good at, but it's just a way to really clean up the mess that you made, right? So you're walking down the street, suddenly you slipped, you fell into a bar. Next thing you know, you're in a pizza parlor. I expect it to happen. You're human, right? I don't expect you to be perfect. However, I do expect you to be honest and accountable. And then you just visit the cleaner. It's, which is an extra workout. A lot of our guys and women as well will show solidarity in jumping in the workout and doing it with you. So some could say it's a punishment. I don't like that term. I think it's just a great way of holding your own feet to the fire.
Yeah, I didn't see it as a punishment. I visited twice. Um, Makes me think twice about doing it though. It definitely will push you because it's not an easy work. It's not a typical workout either. There's some it's pretty intense. I always
Yeah.
struggled. I struggled on the cardio side, and I still struggle on the cardio side. So I got to get into that. And let's talk about cardio health. So Atia talks about one of the things is also making sure that in that last decade that you have the ability to go on a hike, to walk, to go a certain number of miles, to be able to, you know, if needed, get an X amount of distance, right? And to, for quality of life, to be able to walk, right? However far it is. There, a lot of that is lung capacity and the quality at which your lungs are operating. And there's a lot of science now around V2 max and training there. So maybe talk about some of the breakthroughs there that would be really beneficial for those watching or listening to understand around some of the science around how you're training your lungs. A lot of people think if they just go do cardio for 30 minutes and push themselves that they're doing the best, that they're doing it optimally. But there is actually a scientific optimal way to train your lungs based on the latest science.
Yes. Well, another stat that Atia likes to throw out there is that there's an 80% chance that you will most likely die from one of four diseases. So it's neurodegenerative disease, cancer, metabolic disease such as type 2 diabetes, and heart disease. And out of all of those, heart disease is probably the most preventable. And unfortunately, in our country, with all the information, data, science, and literature out there on how to fight heart disease and how to do things right, it's still on the rise. And when it comes to conditioning is probably the best way to help yourself avoid a that 80% number, because 80% is strong. So, and there are a lot of layers to conditioning. It's not just say I'm just clocking 30 minutes like you said. While that's better than nothing, there are certain strategies involved that can really help you get ahead, right?
Yeah, I'm a
And
science and data guy. And when I started to get into this, I got super fascinated by it because I obviously if I can do it in a more optimal way, why not do it that way, right?
yes. And when you condition yourself, one, you're putting years onto your life, but you're also helping improve something that's called HRV, which is your heart rate variability, right? So heart rate variability is these tiny little rhythms in between heartbeats. They're undetectable. You need a specialty device to actually detect them. And this is a measurement of how well you adapt to stress, right? So um it's your entire nervous system. It's your autonomic nervous system. So it's your fight or flight or rest and digest. And this HRV number really measures the balance of where you are between the two. And a good number there, it really means that one, you're conditioned well and that you are very healthy. And a low number can mean the opposite. And conditioning, right, can help you score better in this number. And what you touched on before, VO2 max. So VO2 max is the rate at which our body burns energy, right? So it's basically gives you the size of your engine, how much horsepower that you actually have. And this number as well, your VO2 max and your HRV are great indicators of how healthy you are. And the good news is that these numbers can get better with the right amount of work. And I think one thing you're alluding to in my program, and this took me time to get there, I really focus on heart rate zone training because I have a lot of different men and women that I coach at many different levels. Our heart rate is very specific to ourselves, right? And our own conditioning. So it's something that I can put out there that everyone can do together and actually compete. So I focus a lot on Zone 2 training. Now, you know me, I'm not one for biohacks, right? But if there is a hack, it is Zone 2 training because it's not that hard. And it's a great way to condition yourself and improve that VO2 max score and improve that HRV score. And one thing I'd like to add on conditioning, while conditioning will help us be around and live that long health span, it also gives us a method to deal with stress, right? And I'm not talking about just physical stress, but I'm talking about the stress that we deal, whether it's that email, that call that we had, the things that we're dealing with in our businesses. That conditioning gives us a tool to fight stress where maybe we don't have to reach for a certain vice to help us get through. And that's in my, conditioning has become my pain medication in dealing with stress in life. I'll put it to you that way.
No, it definitely it's proven that exercise is a stress reliever. It releases endorphins and other things that help you deal with stress. I
Because you
find
don't want to
myself,
spend too much time in that fight or flight side. We
yeah,
need, right? That's when we're getting chased by a saber-toothed tiger or someone's trying to kill us. And too many of us spend way too much time in that fight or flight. And that's not healthy for our system. So there are techniques on how to really find more balance in what I talked about, that HRV or our autonomic nervous system.
yeah, it's amazing. Well, I appreciate you, man, joining us first of all, I appreciate your help in life and in helping extend my life, helping me understand myself better, uh, putting some things into place. I will be jumping back in for some accountability after January when I get, in February when I get back in town, and can't wait to hit it hard. I think from February to April, if by the time April comes around when I'm traveling again, if I my goal is to be that another 40 pounds down, and then get into strengthening and maintenance and try to get in as good a shape as you're in, man. You're a beast.
I'm not there yet. I got, I even have work to do myself. So
It's
it's a
it's an
constant
ongoing thing, like
pursuit.
you said, right?
It's never ending,
Never ending. So
yes.
how can people reach you so that they can learn more about your program? You offer a free call to just as an assessment, just to, if people have ideas or questions about their own fitness, their own life. That's super generous. I mean, obviously your time's super valuable, but to jump on a quick 15 or 20-minute call with someone just to check in with them, tell them more about the program, but also answer any questions they have. How can people get a hold of you to do that?
So I can post a link here with this video, and you can book directly with me, agentofchange.org. You can reach me there. I'm also on all the social profiles, Coach Danny Martoe on Instagram, Danny Martoe on Facebook, and Coach Danny Martoe on LinkedIn.
Awesome.
Yes.
Coach, I appreciate you more than you know. I think the other part of it that we didn't even get to is like when we're doing accountability, and this is a safe space for people to talk about life issues as well, marriage, like personal issues. You give a safe space for people to talk about real shit, and stuff that people are going through, and that is just as valuable as the fitness stuff, man. And I appreciate that you were a sounding board for me. We had a lot of parallels, and that we were able to really connect on a deeper level than just you yelling at me to get in shape.
Yes. No, confidentiality is very important in our groups. It's something that I take very seriously, and you need that when you have the people we have in these groups that are sharing the things that they're sharing.
Yeah, the journaling was super helpful. The philosophy side of it, that to me is what helps you flip that switch. Because
Yes.
you really have to understand how to become a better person, and understand the type of person you want to become, and that program that you've put together, a lot of what you talk about leads you down a path of really identifying the type of man you want to be. So I appreciate you for that and so many other things. So thank you for coming on and talking a little bit about fitness life. Hopefully people out there are inspired. People that I know, everyone sets those New Year's resolutions. Don't fall off of them again this year. Make a real change. And I highly suggest you reach out to Coach Danny, learn more about his program, and see if he can be a help to you. If it's a good fit, jump in.
Thank you, Brandon. Just want to mention one thing. You were in the men's group. I know we were talking a lot about the guys today, but I do have a women's group as well.
Oh,
Yes, absolutely. So I have something for everyone, and the women can be even more competitive, and I put them up against any of my men's groups at any time. But so yeah, I cater to both. I also work with different corporations. So if you want to run a corporate challenge, there's plenty of that as well. And book a free coaching call, and we can discuss and try to find the right fit for you. But thank you, Brendan. Appreciate you. All right.
take care.
Awesome.